Hello, everybody, and welcome back to On the Diamond and Into the Deep. And we are finally back. We have just finished the All-Star game in which no Mariners appeared. Who would have bet on that at the start of the season? I know I most certainly would not have. But I also would not have bet on the Mariners being in first place. I would not have bet on them being as bad as they've been offensively. The pitching staff has been as advertised. But other than that, it has been a absolute you know what show. So let's get into that. We'll talk about that. The draft just also concluded, so we'll talk about the first two picks from the Mariners. I don't know much in terms of draft stuff beyond that. Obviously there's stuff to know. Mariners drafted a lot of very toolsy dudes, which is a lot of fun because when you're looking at where you can have ceiling, tools are what bring ceiling. So when you're drafting dudes that have tools, that has the chance for them to pan out. And that's exciting. But again, draft just finished up, which is a lot of fun. If you want to know more about those picks following the first and second round, go listen to people like Jason Churchill. Go listen to people like Joe Doyle. Those are the people that know a lot about the draft. So go listen to those dudes, especially Doyle. But Churchill knows a lot too. And the deadline is also just few short weeks away. We're getting closer and closer to the point where maybe this Mariners team makes a big deal. It could happen really any day, any week now. And will it be Luis Robert? Will it be Brent Rooker? Will it be Randy Rosarena? Who will that dude be? I don't know. Nobody knows. Except for maybe Jerry Dipoto. But even he may not know. He also doesn't know what his future looks like. Because Jerry Dipoto and Scott Service both have contracts concluding at the end of this year, and they both need to make the postseason, which means this team is going to be extra aggressive at the deadline, I would guess. Which really is exciting because you add some bats to this lineup, and you look at that pitching staff they have. You make this lineup even just league average, and that's an exciting, exciting idea. In the postseason, the pitching is what plays, and the Mariners pitching, it plays. So if you can combine your really amazing pitching staff, your solid bullpen that has just gotten better with the addition of Gregory Santos, and you look at your lineup and you can improve that lineup, you could do things in this postseason. But you got to win the division first. The wild card is not looking too friendly for you right now. Sure, Houston is 3.5 out, which would mean you're 2.5 out. But there are a lot of teams in that mix right now. It could change like that. So the Mariners got to win the division, really, if they want to make the postseason. If you don't make the postseason, this is another failure of a season that really does end up being pinned on Jerry Dipoto, Scott Service, and those dudes will be gone. Can you keep dudes like Scott Hunter around? The dudes that are doing this draft, because the Mariners are really good at drafting. They're really good at developing. And can you keep those dudes while getting rid of Dipoto and Service? I don't know. I really hope we don't even have to find out. Because I believe in Jerry Dipoto. I believe in Scott Service. These dudes, I believe, are good enough to do it, and they want to. So we'll see what happens. But today, we are finally back after really brief couple months, I want to say, about that. Been really busy with stuff. Summer business, being in school, You get busy during the summer, working a job, going on vacation, stuff like that. You combine that with the Mariners really just being bland to watch and talk about, and I just haven't really been able to get to anything. But we're finally back, and we're excited to get into it. We're going to try and do once or twice a week coming up here. I'm going to try and get this one out, and then we'll try and preview one on Thursday night, Friday morning. Try and preview the series with the Astros, which is the biggest series up to this point for the Mariners, and maybe will end up being the biggest series of this entire series. Of this entire season. I will be there on Friday night. You gotta get to another win in those City Connects. Will it happen? I don't know. I really don't know. I went to 3 games this last homestand. They were the only 3 games that they won on that homestand. So maybe I can bring some luck, but you never really know. Knowing me, they'll probably lose. But you hope the other way. You'll have a really solid pitching matchup. It's gonna be a tough series, but we'll get into that next episode, like I said. Today, we're talking about the draft, and we're talking about the deadline. So let's get into that. And let's begin with Cijntje. Switch pitcher. First round pick at 15th overall of the Seattle Mariners. And this is a fun pick. You want to talk about energy, you want to talk about fun, you want to talk about something that will bring people into the ballpark. This dude is it. And I hope this dude starts up in Everett and I can go watch him play for the Aqua Sox, because this will be an electric dude to watch through the minors. He'll be really fun to follow. The minor leagues and the prospects are really fun to follow. And just adding a dude like this to the system that is low on pitching, number one, but also just, this is a dude that's really fun to watch. You talk about a dude that could be really good, and this dude is that. You talk about his right-handed arm. We're going to talk about both, but let's start with his right-handed arm, his probably better side. This is the type of arm that could be a number 2 starter at its ceiling. Maybe even, probably not an ace, but probably a number 2. It's a fastball slider changeup combo as of right now. Changeup is his main off-speed pitch. He will use that against lefties, so he is able to face lefties even from that right-handed arm. Fastball is topping out at 98, sitting more so for 94 to 96. The slider is a little bit worse than the change. The dude is fun to watch, though. Like, you want to talk about a dude that's energy. Again, he's interesting. He reminds me a little bit of a Woo in terms of the amount of innings he's thrown. Only threw 140 and 2/3 innings in college, which is not very much if you don't know. He's young. He's only 21 years old, so he is going to take time to develop. He's not going to be your Bryce Miller. He's not going to be your Brian Woo, where he's up after the year after he's drafted. He's not going to be Paul Skeens. This dude's not going to be starting in the All-Star game next year. But that doesn't also mean he's not fun. That doesn't mean he doesn't have a high ceiling. That doesn't mean he's not a dude you should be following. He reminds me more of a George Kirby, Logan Gilbert type riser, where he's going to take a few years. And those two both went through COVID, so that kind of stunted their growth in a weird way. You could say my growth got stunted in a different way. I'm only 5'5", but whatever. But as I was saying, I think he is a few years away, which, when you think about it, probably fits what they need. You have these dudes right now. You have these dudes next year. But then eventually you might have to trade these dudes. They need, they're going to run out of contract eventually. You're going to need dudes to pitch with this next wave. And you have a really fun wave of arms now. You've got Ashton Izzy. You've got Martinez. You've got Walter Ford. You've got Michael Morales. You've got all these dudes that are actually really fun arms and could bring a lot of impact. The Mariners went with impact again in the second round. First round, again, Cijntje. Talk about his right arm, up to 98, with a slider and a changeup. On the left side, he's a little bit more low slot, reliever type, almost like a Paul Sewald delivery, if that's how you want to think about it. Not quite that far, but he's from the left side. He will throw low 80s sweeper. That is nasty if you look at it, and his fastball is low 90s. But again, his right side is better side. You look at that fastball, and that's what pops. I was watching video of him before the draft because there was a lot of buzz of the Mariners taking him, and I wanted to see what he was all about. The first pitch I saw was a fastball at the top of the zone, and that pitch had ride. You talk about a pitch that almost looks like it's rising. That's what that pitch is. It is unbelievable the amount of ride he gets on that fastball, and it makes it dangerous. And that's the type of pitch that the Mariners really, really like. Every one of those starters has a good fastball. They tinkered with Luis Castillo when they brought him over. They told him to use the fastball more. Why? Because very clearly, when they were scouting him and they were seeing whether he was a good trade fit, they liked his fastball. Logan Gilbert comes up with an electric fastball. Bryce Miller, same thing. Now they develop beyond that, and the Mariners are really good at getting dudes to develop beyond that. And Cijntje will probably do the same thing. But that fastball is going to be his strength, and that's the pitch that needs to be successful, and if it's not successful, he's not going to pan out to anything. So watch the fastball throughout his minors. Just watch him throughout the minors. Watch him on MILB.com, TV, whatever it's called, and just get a feel. Watch his clips on Mariners Minors on Twitter. Little plug there for the boy. But, he's a fun one. You get to round 2, though. The Mariners saved a little bit of money in going with Cijntje in the first round. They got him a little bit under slot, which is important in the draft, and it's fun. And my notes right after they picked him were a little bit under slot. They can go over slot at another spot in the draft, and they did that. They did that immediately with their next pick, with picking Ryan Sloan, which is a prep pitcher, up to 99 at 18 years old. MLB.com had him ranked 19th out of all their prospects for the draft. Keith Law had him at 29th. Jim Bowden, 27th. This is a dude that has first-round talent, was first-round talent, and he is now joining the Mariners. They got him for over slot about $3 million, and I think slot was about 1.5. And they had to save the rest of the draft. They got a lot of college dudes, some seniors, which will save you money. But these dudes, all those dudes still also have tools, and they're fun to watch, and they have talent. So the Mariners did well in this draft. And Ryan Sloan is electric. Can he stay healthy? That's one of the main questions. But sitting 93 to 96 at 18 years old, and he's up to 99 miles an hour, yeah, that's electric. That is electric. MLB.com had his changeup already advanced for his age. That's a quick note from them. That's what they said. Sits about mid 80s to low 90s, and it could be a serious secondary for him. The changeup, again, they really like this combination right now of the fastball and the changeup. You can see it with both Cijntje and Sloan. Cijntje and Sloan to Seattle. You got the S. Cijntje's not spelled with an S, but you got the sound. I don't know. And his slider, this is Sloan I'm talking about now. His slider is almost as good as his changeup. So you got a dude that can pitch. You got a dude with 3 legit pitches coming out of high school. He will go down to the ACL, start there, hit Modesto next probably. If everything goes to plan, you can have him in Modesto starting next year, maybe even Everett by the end of next year. We'll see how he develops. We'll see how he goes. He's got to stay healthy, obviously. He's a really, really big dude. 6'5", 220 out of high school. He still probably has some room to grow. He'll get stronger. So if he is a starter, he could be sitting 98, 99 when he comes up, which is electric. Electric. You talk about his grades. The 80 grade scale, if you don't know, 80 is Hall of Famer. 70 is, I think, like All-Star cal. I don't even know. 70 is like star. You get the idea. 80 is the top. Goes down from there. They go by fives. You talk about his fastball and his changeup. Both have a 60 grade on MLB.com, which is a good grade. If you look at all the dudes that are getting graded, there's nothing really above those. 60 is about where most pitchers are at in terms of height, in terms of their best pitches. So you got 2 60 grade pitches and a 55 grade slider, and that's a lot of fun, to be honest. His fastball is similar to Cijntje from what I understand. I haven't seen video of it, but it's another pitch that has ride. It will cut to lefties already. He is playing with cutters. He's playing with sinkers to righties to get ground balls. This dude is already tinkering. He's already figuring out how to use his fastball, how to throw it in a legit way. That's the type of thing the Mariners like. Again, they love their fastballs. So seeing them draft a dude that has a legit fastball that already is being able to move it and play with it, that's a lot of fun. In terms of where he's going to rank on prospect rankings for the Mariners, you're probably getting him in the late single digits. Maybe you get him 8 to 10, but more so probably 10 to 15 on a lot of people's. But again, this is 2 first-round talents, and this was a brilliant way to start your draft. They didn't do a whole lot of eye-jumping type of stuff because there was a lot of college dudes after that. But, I mean, to start with those 2 dudes is unbelievable. And you trust the Mariners with their pitching. They know what they're doing. They've proven that enough that you should just trust them. A lot of people were calling for Trey Savage out of East Carolina University. I was saying the same thing. I didn't think they would go to Cijntje, but they went with Cijntje. I said no. I screamed no when they did it. But Cijntje is going to be a stud. More than likely, hopefully. Assuming he can stay healthy. He's a switch pitcher. He's electric. And you trust the Mariners. Far and away, you trust the Mariners every time. And again, Sloan has already basically been signed. He had a Mariners hat when Scott Hunter FaceTimed him. So the story when that fully comes out will be really fascinating to hear because that means he probably already had a Mariners hat. And I got some Mariners hats. But, that's a lot of fun. It's a dude that is excited to be here. He's not going to go to college. He was commit of Wake Forest, I want to say, which is a pitching lab. But if the Mariners can pull him away from there, that's unbelievable. Really is unbelievable. Fun draft. You really do love to see it. Now, moving away from the draft, let's get into the trade deadline. To start off, here's what I want. I got 4 dudes I want to talk about. And just go into depth on those 4 dudes. I'm going to give you, using some mix of those dudes, a solid, more realistic option, I think. And even this one's not especially realistic because one of the dudes I don't really think is going to be traded to Seattle specifically. And then an ideal one, which is kind of far and away the best, obviously, but it's also a little bit insane. Let's start with the solid, though. Matt Vierling is a dude that I'm really interested in. You can ask me why, because his stats don't jump off the page. His savant doesn't necessarily jump off the page. But when I'm looking at dudes that I want to see in this Mariners lineup that I think could not necessarily provide impact, but provide a spark, I'm looking for a dude that can run, a dude that will just put the bat on the ball. He's not going to whiff. He's not going to chase. He's not going to strike out at a crazy amount. A dude that's going to put the barrel on the ball. A dude that is controllable. And a dude that can play in the outfield or in the infield, or ideally both. And that is Matt Vierling. Vierling is 91st percentile in sprint speed, 85th percentile in chase, 70th percentile in whiff, 73rd percentile in barrel, 75th in expected average exit velocity, and he only has a 24% strikeout rate, which really, when you think about chase and whiff, should probably improve. He's club controllable through the 2027 season, and he's played everywhere in the outfield. He's played first, third, and second, all those positions in his career. He's like a Dylan Moore on steroids almost. And Dylan Moore's really good, but you add both Dylan Moore and Matt Vierling in this lineup, or just on this team, on this roster, that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Would you rather have Ryan Bliss just sitting on the bench, or Matt Vierling getting some at-bats, but also sitting on the bench? I'm taking Vierling 10 out of 10 times. 10 out of 10 times. And that's all the stuff to like. Now, what's not to like? This is what we're going to do with every player. We got what's to like, what's not to like. Matt Vierling, what's not to like? A little bit of a low strikeout, even with that chase and whiff, or a little bit low walk percentage, even with the low strikeout, or with the low chase and the low whiff, which, doesn't really make sense, to be honest. I feel like both his strikeout percentage and his walk percentage will balance out, assuming his chase and whiff stay the same, because you're not chasing a ton and you're not whiffing a ton. I'm not really sure how you're striking out almost 25% clip, which isn't a lot for the Mariners, but is kind of a lot in terms of the league. And you're not walking a lot because it doesn't really make sense to me. I feel like it will balance out, which makes sense. Another thing that maybe you're not going to like is he's not a super impactful dude. He's no star. He's not Luis Robert, who we'll talk about later. He's not Brent Rooker, who we'll also talk about later. But these dudes aren't you just need dudes that can impact the team. And I feel like this dude can impact the team. I really do. Yeah. And defensively, he's average, which, an average defender in all those spots is kind of fine. And you're working with Perry Hill in the infield, which you're not getting the spring work, but it's still Perry Hill, and you're going to get better, I feel like. And this dude is controllable, so he's going to get better over the course of the years, I feel like. And it just, to me, feels like the type of dude that, while his defense is technically on the average in terms of metrics right now, he will get better. And just having him be able to play all those positions is really valuable. In terms of what pitches he's good against and bad against, he's struggled against a changeup, which fits the Mariners' memo. And it's not a thing necessarily to like. Not even necessarily. It's not something to like. When you're looking at dudes, I've been looking for dudes that can hit a changeup, can hit a splitter. And there's not many in the league that can do it. It's a hard pitch to hit. But if you can't hit that, you have to be able to hit the fastball. That's something that Vierling can't do. Historically, he's been okay at it, but this year he's been really bad at it. -7 run value against fastballs this year. It's just not a crazy thing in terms of that. And he's not a crazy good hitter. And his splits are a little bit questionable. It's almost like he's a Rockies player with his WRC plus. At home, he's 130 WRC plus, 71 away. So how does he play into T-Mobile Park? And again, I think for me, I'm not thinking about that though. What I'm thinking about when I'm talking about Matt Vierling is I'm thinking about his speed, I'm thinking about his versatility, I'm thinking about his control, and maybe he's not the impact again, but he can run. Maybe he's not going to hit like crazy, but as long as he can bloop some base hits in and you can have him come pinch run, he still makes an impact on the team. He still makes the team better. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not going to be your star deadline pickup, but he could be a dude that you add to this team and he sparks a little bit. Look at the way Ryan Bliss sparked the team, the way Jonathan Clase sparked the team when they both first came up. They both brought some speed. They both brought some chaos. And that's the type of thing I feel like this Mariners team needs. They need dudes that are maybe going to get on a base a lot, but when they do get on base, they cause havoc. That's why when I'm looking at dudes to add to this deadline, I want dudes that can run. When you think about T-Mobile Park, you need dudes that can run, that can cause chaos, that can just make the game like you're playing the Angels. Look at the teams that are successful against the Mariners at T-Mobile Park. Look at the teams that are successful against the Mariners in general. The Orioles are the outlier because the Orioles are just really freaking good, and they're really good at hitting. But you look at the Central teams, you look at the Royals, you look at the Guardians. These are teams that slap the ball around the yard, and they run all over you. Mariners need to get into that idea more. And they're not going to be that team that does that. That's not their identity. Their identity is to strike out at 36%. You know what I'm saying? Like 36% strikeout rate. That's the identity. We don't run. But in all seriousness, I think this team could run more. And if you start to run more, it causes some chaos. Pitchers get out of rhythm. You just get runners on and you get to, you're going to get pitches to hit. And if you get pitches to hit, this Mariners team can hit. They have dudes that know how to hit. They really do. And I truly deep down believe that. And they're going to add dudes that can hit too. That's why Matt Vierling, for me, in both of my concepts, is the third hitter. He's not your first dude that you're adding. Really isn't. He's ARB eligible starting next year. He's not going to be expensive. That's a thing to like for the Mariners. Dylan Moore is Dylan Moore at this point. This Matt Vierling is basically just another Dylan Moore. You think about it. And Dylan Moore's fine. He can hit sometimes, and he sometimes can't. And you have two Dylan Moores on this roster. Maybe you don't like that, but at the same time, you have to understand that Dylan Moore brings some value to this team, and that's really important. You can't just rely on Dylan Moore starting like 3-4 times a week. You know what I'm saying? Like, you switch that with Matt Vierling. Maybe they each get a couple starts during the week, but then they also get pinch running abilities, put them in the field every once in a while. Like, this is the type of thing you just like. A good team has depth and that have dudes that can do different things. And that's why Vierling, for me, is a dude you add to this team, and he's not the impact hitter again, but he knows what he's doing. He will provide chaos on the base pass, and he will provide you value. You just need value. Now, talking about just straight hitters, Brent Rooker is the top hitter on my list. Straight up hitter. Why? You say maybe you've never heard of Brent Rooker. Maybe you're like, but he's only had a year and a half of good. Yeah, but he's been really, really good. He has raked 96th percentile in batting run value, 98th percentile in barrel, 96th percentile in X slug, 75th percentile in walk. He kills sliders and sinkers. When you talk about run value in terms of those two pitches, sliders, 7 run value, sinkers, 13. Mariners need dudes that can hit those pitches. You talk about WRC plus, 160. What's league average? 100. The dude rakes. He hits the ball. And that's what you need in this lineup. And maybe he's not a perfect fit because he's more of a DH type. We'll get into what's not to like on this dude. But what is to like? You add this dude to your lineup. He hits in your top 4 hitters, and he will provide impact. We've seen the way he hits in T-Mobile Park. I was just in Philadelphia. I saw the way he hit at Citizens Bank Park, which isn't the same, obviously. But the dude is raking. He's hitting. Like, 160 WRC plus is no joke. And when you look at it, it's like, but does he have the percentiles? Does he have the stats to back it up? And yes, the dude does. He kills the ball. He really kills the ball. He backs it up. When you talk about dudes the Mariners need, you need dudes that can hit in high leverage, that can come up clutch, and you need dudes that are going to drive in runners in scoring position. Because the Mariners have sucked at that. We talk about WRC+, 188 WRC plus on high leverage. Again, league average is 100 WRC plus. With runners in scoring position, 207 WRC plus. This dude just feels like the perfect bat to add to this lineup. Will the Mariners trade with Oakland? Probably not. You're going to have to pay an in-division price probably, and I don't know if you want to do that. But if you are going to do it, this is the dude to do it for. And he's sort of perceived as slow, but he's not really slow. 54th percentile in sprint speed isn't exactly slow. It's a little bit above league average, and that's not slow. 27 on your home plate to first, that's not slow. It's not slow at all, you dude. Like, the dude can run. He's a really good base runner, and that's another thing you just need to add to this lineup. Dudes that are good base runners. Dudes that can hit, dudes that can run, and dudes that can just cause chaos. And Brent Rooker can run. Maybe he's not the fastest, but again, he can run. And he rakes. That's key. Now, what's not to like is he strikes out about 33% of the time this year. And he whiffs a lot. Second percentile in the league in both those two things. And that's the only red flag you can really see in him. It really is. And you're going to be like, oh, but the Mariners strike out too much. Yeah, but you're replacing a dude that's maybe it's a 30% strikeout to a 33% strikeout. Like, it's a 3% strikeout difference, but you're adding a dude that can hit. Like, it balances out. You can have those strikeouts as long as you have dudes that can hit. The problem is the Mariners have dudes that are striking out, and that's all they're doing. They're not also hitting. And Rooker hits. He really hits. He's also not a crazy good defender. He's basically DH only. But you could stick him in the corner, and it'll be okay. Would you rather have Mitch Haniger sucking at defense in the corner, and they're probably not going to get rid of him? But would you rather have Mitch Haniger as a terrible corner defender? Would you rather have Brent Rooker out there who's hitting and providing you value at least somewhere? It's not the clubhouse. I want Brent Rooker 10 out of 10 times. I want Brent Rooker. So when you talk about my ideas, in terms of the solid, just somewhat realistic, and Rooker is not the most realistic because I don't think the Oakland A's are going to trade the dude to Seattle. But in terms of that, you add Brent Rooker, Matt Vierling, and then I'm going to throw in Brandon Lau, who we'll talk about in a second, but I'm just going to finish this out. You add Brandon Lau, and then you add like an Austin Adams type to your bullpen. Austin Adams, Adam Ottavino. Like, that's a solid deadline. That's a deadline that's going to make your team better. Like, they have the capital to do that. There's no question. Are they going to spend the capital to do that? Probably not. And I would say they most definitely will not for my ideal one. But that's a deadline that you can get excited about as Mariners fans. Brent Rooker's a dude you can get excited about. Brendan Lau's a dude you can get excited about. Matt Vierling, when you really look at it, is a dude you can maybe get excited about. And then adding a dude to the bullpen that can pitch in the 6th, 7th inning, that's another thing you can get somewhat excited about because that makes the team better. Maybe it's not the quote-unquote sexy move, but it's a smart baseball move. It's a move that makes you better without blowing up your farm system because that's something you probably don't want to do. And trading for Luis Robert or Vladdy Jr. maybe won't blow up, quote-unquote, your farm system, but it's definitely going to cause a damper. It's going to put a dent in that farm system. But let's talk about Brandon Lau. Let's talk about what I like about him. He hits lefties. Mariners haven't been able to hit lefties, even though that's another thing they've just been trying to do. They did the same thing last year with Teoscar Hernandez. This year they brought in dudes that have historically been good against lefties. They haven't hit lefties. They haven't really hit in general. But Brandon Lau's also he's been a reverse splits dude. He's a left-handed hitter, and he's been a reverse split, which is really wild because he hits sliders really well and cutters really well. Those are probably the two best pitches he hits against. In terms of sliders, 4-run value against them. Cutters, 5-run value against them. Those are sliders and cutters mostly that he's going to be seeing from left-handed pitchers. When you look at WRC plus, 192 WRC plus against lefties, 120 against righties. Now, the damper is he hasn't had very many at-bats against lefties, especially compared to righties. But still, it's interesting. He hasn't hit the fastball this year, but historically he has, and his bat speed is fine. His bat speed is about league average, so there's nothing really to worry about there. He strikes out a decent amount, but 25.4% again is not that much for the Mariners. That's about a little bit less than what most of the dudes are averaging. So it's like you can take his strikeouts because he can hit, and he walks at 10.5% of the time. Like, I'll take a dude that strikes out 25% and walks 10%. That's fine. It's just you need base runners. And if you add him, that's a base runner that you can have Brent Rooker drive in. Like, it's just, you have to think about the deadline as a whole. When the Mariners make their first move, I don't want people freaking out being like, oh my God, he's not the impact move. But it's like you got to wait for the deadline to be over. You got to look at it in a whole. It's just like the offseason, really. And you can freak out all you want. It's going to happen, but try not to. You know what I mean? Continuing, though, he has a 473 X slug. And he's not slow. 40th percentile in sprint speed. And he's been better away from home. I talked about Matt Vierling having crazy splits. So does Brandon Lau. 149 away, 117 home, and that's more what you like because that means dude can hit anywhere he goes. He doesn't like the trop, which is kind of weird, but because he's a lefty pull hitter, he probably will like T-Mobile Park. Well, the batter's eye cause a problem? We can ask Teoscar Hernandez, can't we? But the dude hits. I mean, when he's healthy, he hits. Now, what's not to like about him is he does get injured a ton. He's a dude that has to stay healthy, and he's struggled to do that. But when he stays healthy, the dude hits. He also whiffs a little bit. 31.6% of the time, he whiffs. So we can just, scratch that away. Another thing to like, though, is that he has a 167 WRC plus with runners in scoring position. So that's enjoyable. But what's not to like is he has way more at-bats against right-handed pitchers, why is that something you don't like? Because that means the Rays team has a platoon type, and the Rays are really smart as a team. So you gotta put in some thought on why they think that. Now, in terms of contract, dude has a club option after this year for $10.5 million, and if he's healthy and if he hits for you, you're picking that up. After 2025, he has an $11.5 million club option. So you have potentially 2 years of club control without it being super expensive as a trade cost, or super expensive just in terms of the money you'd owe him. And that's something, unfortunately, you have to think about for the Mariners because they don't spend a lot of money, do they? So again, just in terms of a solid deadline, you're looking at the three dudes I've talked about already, Matt Vierling, Brendan Lau, and the ticker will be Brent Rooker. And you add a little bullpen dude in the 6th, 7th inning like an Austin Adams. And that's a solid deadline, and that's something you can get excited for as you head into August, which will be an important month. Really important month. The Mariners got to separate themselves. They got to prove that they are the best team in the American League West, build up a lead so you don't really have to stress too much in September, and you can just win the division. Now, that said, they're going to stress in September, and who knows if they're going to win the division. I've personally never experienced them winning the division in my lifetime, which is really kind of crazy. But, there's a first time for everything, ain't there? First time for everything. And then the final dude today we will talk about, he is in the ideal. You take the same package I already talked about. So you swap Matt Vierling with Luis Roberts. And you have got an unbelievable deadline. And you ask why? And why do I like Luis Roberts? Well, number one, he is the definition of impact. And you cannot tell me you do not want another Julio Rodriguez on this team. Superstar potential, dude that runs, dude that hits, dude that strikes out, dude that plays defense, dude that has zero clutch. I don't actually know if that's true. But 2 Julio Rodriguez in this lineup. That's the real deal. That is the real deal. But what's not to like is you're going to be paying the center field price. Purdue, you're going to play in the corner for the most part. And that's going to be a heavy prospect price. Get ready to say goodbye to some boys you've liked watching in Everett, in Arkansas, on the nuts. R.I.P. And he also gets injured quite a bit. Dude has not stayed healthy. It's been some kind of weird injuries. He was also sick quite a lot a couple years ago, and that caused him to miss a ton of time. But the big thing you're not going to like is that he is going to cost a ton of prospect capital. And he also strikes out at 32.8% of the time, which is kind of a lot, but it should balance out because he hasn't necessarily been quite that high in his career. It's been more of a 27, 28, I believe. But again, this is the dude that if you really want to go for it, this is the dude you had. You had this dude or Vladdy for this lineup, and you're looking at like a really fun team, really good team. You're also preventing a different team from getting one of those dudes. Like, go do it. Just do it. Like, let's go win the division, basically, is what I'm saying. And that's going to do it today, though. Mariners play Friday. We'll try and get an episode out Thursday night, Friday morning. As I said, I will be there Friday night. Go Mariners. This is a massive series coming up against Houston. The Mariners are 1 game ahead in the division. This series could go either way, really, from what I understand. Houston has been on a run. They are 50-46. Mariners are 52-46. They are tied in the locks column now. Mariners just have 2 more wins as they've played 2 more games. But you look at it, and this series could go if the Mariners sweep. They go to 4 games up on Houston. If they get swept, they go to 0. They go to 2 games back. So you can go anywhere from 4 games up to 2 games back in this series. This is a big one. And this sets the stage for a massive second half of the season. So go Mariners. We'll talk about it later this week. But go Mariners. Peace, y'all.